Liz Cheney seems very content to play the role of the Democrats' front man, or should I say front woman, in attacking Trump over January 6th. So very often these days when you turn on the media or social media, you don't see Pelosi. Pelosi has made some statements. In fact, she said the Republicans are everything they do every day is a kind of continuation of January 6th. And what's funny about Pelosi, that I couldn't even really hear her because if you look at her, her eyebrows are sort of like 9 inches above her eyes, and they're just like this and motionless. So it's that because she looks good for 100 years old, which I guess is true. Anyway, Liz Cheney is the one who's sort of carrying the spear, carrying the water for the left. I guess she figures her career is finished in Wyoming, so why not angle for some different kind of job? University president, foundation president, CNN anchor, who knows? So here's Liz Cheney. I'm now going to quote her. Imagine if President Eisenhower had summoned a mob to Washington and sent them to march on the Supreme Court during arguments in Brown v. Board of Education. Then imagine as the mob invaded the Supreme Court, President Eisenhower watched and did nothing. It's unthinkable. It's unthinkable. So I want to, this analogy on the surface appears kind of convincing. Yeah, wow, that would be very disturbing. But let me note a few things at the outset. First of all, let me note that there's a big shift here in the kind of culpability that Liz Cheney is trying to assign to Trump. For a while there, in fact, for months, Trump instigated the insurrection. Trump made it happen. Trump was behind it. Now they've moved from Trump did it, Trump started it, to, in effect, Trump didn't do anything in reaction to it. That's a whole different kind of allegation, right? Because it's one thing to say, the bank manager robbed the bank. The bank manager was the guy behind it. He's the one who set off the burglars. And it's a whole other thing to say, when the bank was being robbed, the bank manager stood by and did nothing. Well, even if true, that's a whole different allegation. You're essentially now alleging a certain kind of lassitude or passivity or negligence. It's a whole different thing from instigating the crime or crimes in the first place. Now, let's probe the Liz Cheney analogy. First of all, she says that Trump summoned a mob, presumably to attack the Capitol. But that's not true. Trump organized a rally that was held in a legal spot on the green, on the mall. He spoke at the rally. There's nothing illegal about that. So that's what Trump summoned. And why would you call fellow Republicans a mob? You're calling people who support the president, who believe in the president's cause, who are coming to D.C. for that reason. Why call them a mob? Number two, there's a whole difference between walking into the Capitol, the so-called People's House, and, quote, invading the Supreme Court. Why? Because the Supreme Court is an institution deliberately insulated from the will of the people. The court is supposed to be independent of popular opinion, and it's completely different from elected officials who are supposed to be chosen by the people, reflective of popular opinion, and answerable to the public. So, in other words, marching on Congress is a whole different thing than, quote, taking over the Supreme Court. And number three, unarmed citizens walking in the Capitol with cops standing around, in some cases actually chatting with them and taking photos of them, hardly constitutes a, quote, invasion. This is just a misuse or an abuse of words. So this Liz Cheney analogy is flawed from beginning to end, but it's precisely the kind of claptrap that this horrible woman, who apparently now considers knifing her fellow Republicans, has now become an art form for her. But even then, she's doing it ineffectively, clumsily, and as I tried to just point out, illogically.